Namaskar, hello and welcome to this edition of the Healing Hour. Today, when we are recording this session, it happens to be the International Stuttering Awareness Day. स्टटरिंग जो कि हम सभी समझते हैं हकलाना, रुक रुक के बोल पाना। और अभी हम कार्यक्रम के प्रारंभ में राग हंसत ध्वनि की जो प्रस्तुति वीणा पर सुन रहे थे, उसमें भी कुछ रुक रुक कर ही स्वर की लहरियां आप सभी तक आ पा रही थी। भारतीय मनीषा में रोगों के तीन प्रकार माने गए हैं: शारीरिक, मानसिक और आत्मिक। द फिजिकल, the mental and the spiritual, we can say. So those related to the larger psychic or the related to the soul plane. तो आज ये जो स्टटरिंग का जो डिसऑर्डर है, हकलाने की बात है, इट्स नॉट अ डिजीज, इट्स मोर ऑफ अ डिसऑर्डर। और हम लोगों ने अपने, अगर आप हमारे बैकग्राउंड पे देखेंगे, तो वी विश टू सेलिब्रेट फ्रॉम द एजेस ऑफ आरोग्यम इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ इंटीग्रेटेड मेडिकल साइंसेज कि वी ऑल हैव टू बिकम प्राउड स्टटर्स। तो हकलाने की जो बात है, रुकने की बात है, गड़बड़ घबराने की बात, वी ऑल स्टर एट सम पॉइंट और द अदर। हम लोगों को अगर किसी अचानक एक भरी सभा में अगर हमें खड़ा कर दिया जाए, तो प्रायः 99.9999999% हम सभी स्टटर कर ही जाएंगे। तो यह जो डिसऑर्डर है, यह जो कंडीशन है, इसके बारे में वी हैव अ डॉयन मेडिको इन डॉक्टर सुरभि वैश मित्तल, who would be telling us more in further detail कि किस प्रकार से इस तरह के जो मेंटल लेवल के डिसऑर्डर्स होते हैं या कंडीशंस होती हैं, तो उससे पार कैसे पाया जा सकता है। सम डिजीजेस आर क्योरेबल, बट डिसऑर्डर्स और कंडीशंस दे हैव टू बी मैनेज्ड। तो हीलिंग आर का जो प्रतिपाद्य विषय है, जो निहित इसका जो आशय है, वो यही है कि विभिन्न, जो कि मानवीय जीवन में विभिन्न प्रकार के जो रोग हैं या कठिनाइयां हैं, शारीरिक, मानसिक और इवन आत्मिक, तो उससे कैसे पार पाया जाए। तो डॉक्टर सुरभि, 22 अक्टूबर को ये इंटरनेशनल स्टटरिंग अवेयरनेस डे मनाया जाता है, जैसा कि हम सभी ने बात की। और इसके साथ, हकलाने के साथ, घबराने के साथ, कुछ अनयूजुअल फेशियल और बॉडी मूवमेंट्स भी आ जाते हैं बहुधा। और तो आपका इस विषय पर क्या कहना है, योर ओपनिंग रिमार्क्स, एंड देन वी विल फर्दर दिस सेशन फॉरवर्ड। या
नमस्कार सभी को। इंटरनेशनल स्टटरिंग अवेयरनेस डे की एक मैं कहना चाहूंगी, एक अवेकनिंग की का मोमेंट है। एंड कहते हैं बोली एक अमोल है, जो कोई बोले जानी, ये तराजू तौल के तब मुख बाहर आनी। तो वाणी जो है वो एक एक ऐसा विषय है जो औरन को शीतल करे आप महु शीतल होए। वाणी तो एक ऐसी बात है जिसे जब हम रखते हैं तो हमारे अंदर के मनोभाव, हमारे विचार, हम बाह्य स्वरूप में उसे प्रकट कर पाते हैं। So stuttering in technical terms, really means that when you are, it's a form of, you can say stammering or repetitive, disfluent speech of repetition of sound, syllable, or words, or prolonged pronunciation of any words. You can say it's a disfluent speech. So stuttering is something which is certainly not a disease. It can come in the classification of a disorder. But मैं सबसे पहले कहना चाहूंगी कि आप जैसे भी हैं, जो भी हैं, accept your stuttering and be yourself, and prepare for the unexpected, be flexible. But you have to understand that this is not a weakness, this is not a stigma. You have to learn to win over it. You have to learn to think that you are all powerful and you will win over it. And it is something which can, really, you can learn to live with it and learn to win over it largely. So if we say stuttering, it can come into two categories primarily. We say developmental and neurogenic. And अगर हम बात करें कि हमारी बॉडी में 7 चक्रास होते हैं, so which is the chakra which is responsible for speech? Is the throat or the Vishuddhi chakra? So stuttering is actually, if we see the causative, analysis from the chakra theory, it is emanating from a disorder or misalignment of 4 chakras. 4 as in Vishuddhi chakra, the main throat chakra, which is responsible for speech. And then we have the Agya chakra, the willpower, which is controlling the speech. And then we have the Sahasrar chakra, जो आत्मिक बात कही गई है, that, how your spiritual well-being is there. And then the heart chakra or the Anahata chakra. So very often it is found that stuttering is as a result of your emotional disbalances somewhere, wherein you are having some, it is said that some people who feel low about themselves, जिसे कहते हैं हीन भावना, या एक low confidence, that also accentuates or exacerbates the stuttering. So these 4 chakras, meditate on these 4 chakras if we do, so that's from the chakra theory aspect of it. Clinically, our brain has 2 areas, which is called the Broca's area and the Wernicke's area. These are in the cerebral hemispheres, the left side, which are responsible for speech. So definitely, in the neurogenic part of stuttering, there is some, it may be due to an accident or brain trauma. It may be due to a cancer or a brain tumor, and so on and so forth. It may be due to stroke. We say stroke, which is, ischemia or to the particular that part of the brain. And then, of course, developmental is happening in children, and 75% of these developmental stuttering are curable. When they grow out of their childhood, they are healed. So it's there's so much to it, so much to it, and I'm sure we can go on and on. But now these are the salient points. Never feel that you are weak, and never feel that you have lost the
Just
battle.
to bring some trivia to this conversation, just a little over 1% of the global population is found to have this very specific communication disorder, and it can be won over, as Dr. Surbi said. And one of the most influential political speech makers who steered the entire Westminster, for that matter, Winston Churchill, he's reported to have grown with a stutter. तो हमने अपने पृष्ठभाग पर जो लिखा है कि first and foremost, let's accept what we are. Then it can be overcome by these 3 simple tactics: practice, practice, and practice. And accept your stuttering and be yourself. That is the very first important aspect of it all. And then prepare for the unexpected and be yourself. So, अगर हम लोग इसको स्वीकार कर लेंगे, acceptance is perhaps the first step for redemption. क्योंकि once we accept, there is some gap or some disorder, not everyone is perfect. आरोग्यता के भाग में वही बात है कि कोई भी मनुष्य संपूर्ण प्रकार से परफेक्ट नहीं है. None of us are absolute in any fashion or the other. And when it comes to disorders which connect us with some of the mental spaces, stuttering, as Dr. Surbi would tell you, has a genetic component as well. So ये जो त्रयी है, ये जो प्रस्थान त्रयी स्टटरिंग से जीतने की प्रैक्टिस प्रैक्टिस एंड प्रैक्टिस एंड accept your stuttering and be yourself and prepare for the unexpected and be flexible. कुछ फर्क नहीं पड़ता अगर हम हकला गए. Once this acceptance come into place, the confidence oozes out phenomenally. And as he said, that one of the very profound public speakers of his own times, or of all times perhaps, when Nazi Germany was attacking across, it was Winston Churchill's fiery speech in the British Parliament, which won, which I would say got adrenaline rushed across the British people, and then Europe stood and against the evil of Hitler and so forth. So this is what we can say. So, and Dr. Surbi, taking it forward, like, is this stuttering a kind of does it happen after birth, or it is a congenital by birth
Well,
kind of a
well,
phenomena? कब
yes.
होता है ये?
Usually it develops during childhood, early childhood. And well, it can be due to a delivery, a trauma also, because like these are certain structures of the brain, the speech area, the speech motor area. So definitely, I mean, some kind of trauma during birth can lead to uh, you know some kind of cerebral damage or in the child, or that is one aspect. But usually this is more linked to the emotional and personality development. That is where we find that the developmental milestones have come. But even after that the child has acquired, so this is more kind of an acquired disorder. And very often this is when the children multi disciplinarity, when they are learning multiple subjects or multiple dimensions they're being exposed to, it is found that there this grasp of the multidisciplinarity is also impaired, and stuttering comes along with that. So somewhere it is a kind of a personality, largely personality trait. And this is this fundamental cause is emotional, some kind of a loss of self belief, self confidence. So cognitive therapy, speech therapy, when practice, and along with practice, it is a feeling of, it is a thought of assertion. The child needs to be constantly, auto suggestions to be made. You're fine the way you are, you're just fine. When the child accepts that I am fine, I'm great, and the child may be academically brilliant. It's just that in certain areas, the dysphasia is occurring. So it's that the eloquent speech is not coming. He might have very superior vocabulary. He might be so good, he or she might be so good at articulating that speech, but when it comes to pronunciation, or speaking it on stage fright, for that matter, or what we say, the blues of going on stage. So this needs a very amicable and a very encouraging, a congenial ecosystem. And that's
Mhm.
why I feel our schools are such nurturing ecosystems, and that's where they play a role.
Mhm.
And it can really make a difference. That if we have nurturing teachers, nurturing school leaders, and peer groups, so this is something which is very, very behavioral, largely in
It has
children.
been found that generally, when a new sibling arrives in a family, or a
Yes.
kid is admitted to a new settings, maybe a new school or a new city,
Hmm.
this stuttering somewhere emanates all of a sudden. It somewhere complies with what you said, that emotional trauma.
Hmm.
Uh, so nowadays there is a tendency off and on that if there is some disorder, something or that way, kids are rushed to a psychiatric care. So, what is your professional opinion about that? That in a situation like stuttering in the early childhood, because 2 to 7 years is something where that's the etymological thought process. So, how the parents should really cope up with this in conjunction with the schools and then getting some medical help for that matter?
So two things, one is that every child is a bountiful universe in his or her own self, and the child is a beginning of so many possibilities, so much of scope, so much of potential. If we talk of the children, कहते हैं कि बच्चों में भगवान का स्थान होता है, तो this is the beginning of the nascent talent. So it's very easy to kind of box them into psychiatric diagnosis, but
Mm-hmm.
but this is not the way it should be handled at the outset, and in fact children should be nurtured. If there is some deficiencies, if there is something which the parents feel is not up to the mark, we have to work on it, say for example there are so many habits, when we talk of stuttering per se, practices like making the child talk to a mirror, when he looks at himself, speaks in front of the mirror, watches his facial muscles movements, how he's speaking, falls in love with himself. You have to tell the child, love yourself. You love the child, but the child loves himself herself too. And then newspaper reading, something like this, book reading, reading aloud. These practices help a lot, So when you practice so much, so then you come out of your inhibitions and the stuttering gradually goes down, because you see, it's all psychosomatic. Unless it is a structural pathological defect, this kind of a developmental stuttering can be really won over, So again, a nurturing ecosystem, the school, parent, and teacher compact is what will make the
So the
difference.
bottom line is like the proud stutter. Give the stutterers a special space in the learning communities for that matter. Uh, Empathize with them and give them their due, that let them complete their sentence. They might be having something very worthwhile to say. They might be having some of the path-breaking thought processes undergoing in their cerebrums. And perhaps they might not be able to speak out in such eloquence and in a continuous fashion, but empathy and empowering them is something which is so very important. So, can stuttering be cured, Dr. Surbi, or it's a lifelong?
Well, you
Yeah.
see, that developmental stuttering, as I said, 75% of the cases, they come out of this and they can, move to normalcy. But neurogenic, of course, if there is there, we have to do, if it's a neurosurgery which is required, if it's a brain tumor that needs to be healed, and then cognitive and behavioral, speech pathologists will work with you. It can get better slightly, but the point is that drugs per se have a very limited role.
Mhm.
Drugs for stuttering have huge side effects and they cannot be given in the long run. So largely the stuttering is something which is, it's a behavioral treatment
Mhm.
largely, which has to be administered, which has to be reached out. And empathy and empowerment, as you very rightly said, is the core to it. The more the confidence is bolstered. Similarly, trauma victims, of course, if there is, you'll do the surgery, you'll do the remedial part of it, corrective measures. So it might come back to some extent, but then to say that it's completely cured is to be honest. I mean, to be truthful, it might not be the case in all the patients, all the uh, cases. So we have
Mhm.
to learn, as you very rightly, as it's mentioned on the backdrop, to accept your stuttering and be yourself. It's not a stigma. It is something. It is just that we have to create a congenial atmosphere for our fellow learners, our fellow students, or fellow colleagues. And say for example the movie Hitchki, I would like to bring in here, where
Okay.
Rani Mukherjee, the character she has played of a teacher, how she struggles to get a job in the school, and classically it has been told to be a Tourette syndrome. So
Mhm.
Tourette syndrome, it is a tick. Tick is a repetitive movement which is abnormal, which is done repetitively, but it is close to stuttering. It's not exactly stuttering. She goes
Mhm.
and then she speaks. After every two sentences she goes So this is kind of a tick, but the classical way it has been portrayed, how she wins it over, with her determination. That's where the Agya Chakra, the willpower, comes into play. The Sahasrar, her spiritual self belief, then her Vishuddhi starts operating, because her phenomenal ways and pedagogies of teaching, they just, overpower and, mesmerize the students. And then, of course, her heart, it's so full of love and affection, so full of blossoming, so full of, power, empowering heart chakra, which, which just touches the heart of the students whom she's teaching. And how she becomes a success and an icon in that movie is something to learn from. So nothing stops you from success. Nothing stops you from reaching the highest rungs of the ladder.
Lovely, lovely, lovely. And I think, Dr. Subi, can we stretch this very argumentation, this very approach, perhaps the Indic approach of accepting in other mental disorders as well? Largely, I'm just trying to give an idea. Some deficiencies, some disorders, whatever we have got from Mother Nature during the course of our germination, our pregnancies, or any of the genetic defects for that matter. So, accepting your situation, it really helps you to find out ways and means to cope up with that deficiency for that matter.
So indeed, I mean, again, I'm bringing along a very English movie here, The Beautiful Mind, where
Mhm.
it talks of the Nobel laureate. It's a really award-winning movie where he's affected with schizophrenia and diagnosed by psychiatrists, and how he makes his life, that iconic. So,
Mhm.
so life is full of travails and travesties. That is what the challenge is. So,
Mhm.
how children, of course, at such young age, if we take them to the psychiatrist, I mean, with all due respects to the domain, I'm a clinician myself, and I do appreciate that there is a role of psychiatry where it has a role. So again, we bring the classical triad of accurate diagnosis, optimal investigation, and judicious medication. So it can be life saving where it is. Even psychiatry has a role to play. But then, at the outset, if we just say that you where जहाँ पे सुई काम कर सकती थी वहां पे एक sword आपने invoke कर दी. Children are so tender, so gentle. So try your level best, to treat them without medications, without any invasive procedures, as far as you can. And that is best with love and affection. What
Mhm.
works most and best with children is love and affection, is understanding,
And in
is
today's multi-dimensional economy, whatever we have, every human being, every learner can have a differentiated career path for himself or herself. And as I mentioned about the bygone Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Winston Churchill, even the outgoing President of United States of America, President Joe Biden, is detected to be a stutterer. He's a proud stutterer, and he's led the, I would say, the most powerful country on the planet for 4 glorious years with whatever successes or failures. So somewhere or the other, it is your self-confidence. And again, we will like to bring this winning triad. And Dr. Surbi has very rightly said that don't box a kid into a psychiatric diagnosis, because more than the condition itself, it is this label which is put onto a student, to a young child, that becomes so very painful and disgusting. So stuttering is nothing which makes you dysfunctional. It is just that, oh, जैसे गाड़ी घिच घिच करके रुकती है पर चलती तो है भाई. So practice, practice, and practice. Accept your stuttering and be yourself. And there is no fear to prepare for the unexpected and being flexible. So we'll close today's session with this minute rendition of Rag Hansa Dhwani. And music is something which is so very central, so very soothing for the nerves for that matter. And
healing.
perhaps
Healing.
raga therapy or music therapy, your speech therapist can really bring out to you. So let's hear and let's rejoice our state of being and being a proud stutterer.